What's going on, awesome people? Take number, I don't remember. We're gonna see how this goes. We're gonna see if the GoPro cuts off 17 times, overheats. We're gonna attempt to get this done. I actually recorded this video yesterday, but I left out some things, so here we are. We're starting over. I'm going to do my best to keep it in a better time frame and still squeeze everything in, because this is Truth in the Truck, as you can tell. My life, part 2. Alright, we left off last week with me accidentally hanging myself on a rope swing in the backyard. Well, I survived. Thank the Lord. If not, obviously, I wouldn't be here, right? Dr. Pepper. I'm off work. It's just been crazy. This YouTube thing, this video is just... It's the realness. The raw me. Shortly after all that, my family and I moved to Texas. We lived in a neighborhood that was a little rough, commercial, literally right next to a train track. The house we lived in, literally 15 feet from the backyard, 25, 30 feet from the house, railroad tracks. Great alarm clock. Woke us up every morning in time to get up and walk to school or go catch the bus, depending on which one we chose to do. Man, that was kind of a tough time in my life, because number one, we moved. My life was in Georgia and I was a young kid. Dad was on the road driving trucks. Mom worked for a parachute company, sewing parachutes. She worked 100 yards from the house. But I was a little bit of a smaller kid back then. Got picked on a lot, got bullied quite a bit, and honestly in the neighborhood, I got beat up a lot. The neighborhood kids used to kick the crap out of me when my cousins and my brother wasn't around. As soon as they got a chance, Marcus by himself. Now, don't get me wrong, I probably didn't do myself no favor with my smart mouth. If you know me now, you know I'm quick-witted, and yeah, that's it's the way it was, the way it is. I do much better now than I used to, obviously. You know, Texas was great. It was fun. I loved living there. Played soccer, played basketball, played baseball. Obviously not the sports I'm known for, since obviously I coach wrestling. But it was the foundation, for sure. Somewhere in the 4th grade, we ended up moving back to Georgia, 92, I think, because my grandmother had been diagnosed with cancer, and Mom wanted to be close, so we moved back. And because the transition happened so quickly, we actually lived in a camper for a while. Me and my brother in the back, Mom and Dad up front. Right out in the front yard of my aunt and uncle and my grandparents' place. Grandmother ended up passing away, unfortunately, due to cancer. We upgraded from a camper at that time to a bus. And by the way, go schoolie life, I guess that's where it kind of got instilled in me early. Drop a comment, throw some likes our way. Been trying to get Tony to go schoolie life for a couple years after the kids graduate, where we can just travel the country and hike and do whatever God has for us and sees fit for us to do. So give us some likes in the comment section down below, okay? And obviously, if you stuck with us this long, do us a favor, give us a thumbs up, smash that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and keep up with us. We're coming up on our 1 year. Let's get us to 100 folks. That'd be great. After the bus, we moved into what was my grandparents' single wide trailer that they had lived in. And most people would have never known that the entire time while we were living in that trailer, building our house next door, literally trailer, house, we were literally building it next door, we had no running water. Me and my brother every other day had to go up to the neighbor's house and collect water in old milk jugs, 2 liter, 3 liter bottles, and that was one of our chores we did. Now that I think back about it, you know, it probably kind of sucked, but we never noticed it. We never cared, because truth is, our parents did the best they could. And don't get me wrong, my parents were not perfect by any means. Not always the most stable relationship, but you know, my parents this May will be married 43 years. God has stuck it out with them and been the glue that's been between them, and you know, I can't be more grateful for that. You know, that was a trying time, especially for a young preteen teenager. That's your prime, where you want your friends around, you're going through all these emotional, hormonal things, blah blah blah. It was tough, but we got the house built. We managed to get through it. Started into sports really my 8th grade year, 7th, 8th grade year, playing football. I was okay at it. I still wanted to play basketball. But my 8th grade year, one of the coaches, Coach Bowen, love him to death, he come to me and was like, "Hey Marcus, do me a favor." I said, "All right, Coach, what's up?" He goes, "Go try this sport out called wrestling. See if you like it. If you don't, come back. You got a spot on the team, but I just want you to go try it." In retrospect, what he was doing was telling me I stunk at basketball. I should go try wrestling. I did, and the rest is history. Obviously, did really good as an 8th grader, went undefeated. Devil wasn't happy with my life, because I was really focusing on Jesus at that time in my life, because I'd kind of gone through a phase where I was doing some things I shouldn't have been doing, and I refocused by being in church, started preaching, because that call was put on my life very early. But ended up having a car wreck my freshman year. It was September, October-ish, I do believe. Was with a buddy, 2 buddies actually. I was in the passenger seat. We were rushing home because we were somewhere we shouldn't have been. I guess that's what kids do. Not a lot's changed, you know. We ended up having a really, really bad car wreck. Thank God he had his hand on us. We were all church kids. Because I remember the last time I looked over at the speedometer, we were hitting 120. And I know good and well when we, I want to say lost control, but it was more or less the brakes actually locked up as we was going through a curve, and instead of taking the curve, it shot us straight. We ended up hitting a bunch of young growth trees, pine trees, at least 100, 110 mile an hour. We all walked out of it, amazingly. Shouldn't have. That car crumpled up like bubblegum wrapper that you crunch up in your hand and throw in the garbage can. Boy, did it ever. Walked out with only a concussion and some internal bruising from my throat to my waist. And let's just put it this way. My face hit the windshield so hard from the airbag deploying and hit me. When it threw me into the windshield, I left a profile imprint of my face, like right here. right in the windshield. But we walked away from it, and that's only because of God, because honestly we shouldn't have. A couple weeks later, I was on the wrestling mat wrestling. Shouldn't have been, but that's just the kind of kids we were. That's how that generation was. Honestly, probably the last of that generation, and how the generations have been raised. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know there's still some tough kids these days, but it's just different. We're part of, I'm that beginning end generation of riding in the back of pickup trucks, drinking out of a water hose, flip phones, and the beginning of the internet kind of thing. But I finished that wrestling season 36-18, missed placing at state by 1 point actually. Lost in the blood rounds. Really focused that summer on freestyle and Greco wrestling. Come back my sophomore year, won state against the odds when I was told that I shouldn't have, I wasn't good enough to, I didn't belong there. Even after I'd done it, I can't tell you how many countless times I was told that I didn't deserve it. And most people are probably right, I probably didn't deserve it, but I earned it, so there's a difference. Junior year was a crazy year. Going into my junior year in August, I was not going to play football. I wasn't a huge fan of the coaches. Well, the head coach anyway. I loved the defensive coordinator at the time. He was actually my wrestling coach, and I mean, I absolutely loved that man to death. He plays a huge role in my life, just like my community coach, like I do for our kids now. My community coach at the time, Jeff Mayer, and there wasn't a tournament that the man wouldn't take us to if we wanted to go. There wasn't a time that I didn't need him that he wasn't there. And I'll touch on that more here in a second. Coach Cunningham loved us with tough love, but he showed me how to be a dad in a lot of ways. He showed me how to be a husband. He showed me how to treat people. And he held me to a standard that even when I failed, he didn't change his love for me. And which is why, as I started going through a lot of this next few things, the last few years of my teenage years, was one of the reasons I really was able to push through it and regain my feet. But anyway, that summer going into my junior year, I had another really bad car wreck where I was driving and I flipped my Geo Tracker, baby Jeep made by Chevy. Loved that thing. Convertible, 4-wheel drive. It was raining. I hit like a little dip in a road, turned up left, hit that dip, and somehow, don't even know how, I mean, even in the police report, the police officer wrote, not sure how it happened. But I ended up flipping my car 6 times. Thankfully, it was just me in it. I remember standing up so quickly that I busted the passenger side window with my head when I stood up to get out, which happened to be one of the few actual visible damage that I took from it. Had a couple little cuts on my head from where I busted the window. Had some scrapes and bruises on my hands. Not even sure where they came from, but I remember walking out of the back of literally the back of the vehicle, and I sat down in the middle of the road and I just waited until somebody showed up. Didn't have a cell phone, because even though we had bag phones back then, and the candy bar and the flip phones had just come out, I wasn't one of those kids that had it. I didn't get that until I went and paid for it myself, because my parents were like, nah, I did have a pager though, teal green, see-through. It's crazy how you remember that little crazy stuff. But I remember the police officer looking at me and going, "You're one blessed kid." He goes, "Because you shouldn't have walked out of that." And that's twice in my life in the early stages where I'd walked out of stuff that I probably shouldn't have. But I did. You know, that year I went on to place second at state, had made it to the finals, kind of had a rough go that wrestling season, had tore my MCL, you know, wrestled through it anyway. Wouldn't it peak, but you know, you go out and you do what you got to do. I did play football that year after I wrecked my car. Didn't have to make a car payment, so let's go play ball. It was okay. But the big thing that happened that year is I'd actually met a girl that was much older than me, ended up getting engaged, ended up moving in with her, and worked full-time, going to school, and was helping her take care of her 4-year-old daughter at the time. It's kind of when I realized in my life that I was meant to be a family man. I absolutely loved it. Obviously things didn't work out. You know, time is what time is. God had his plans. It just wasn't in the plans. Don't get me wrong, it was rough at the time. We both went through a lot during that transition. She's a great person. If she ever sees this, life happens. We obviously went our separate ways, and she's doing her thing, I'm doing mine, and you can't be mad about life. Sometimes you just got to chalk it up for what it is and move on, because you know God's got better plans, or bigger plans. The downside is it did start me on a spiral to party. So much so I ended up getting arrested for possession, which I didn't have anything on me. I'd be the first one to tell anybody. I make mistakes, I own up to it. I honestly can say I did not have anything on me. The evidence that they end up coming up with was about as bogus as it comes. They found a cigarette pack in my car testing positive for THC, which it should have. THC's in cigarettes. Oddly enough, they were not my cigarettes. You live, you learn. The county that happened at actually ended up getting in trouble a couple years later. But unfortunately, even though that situation eventually got resolved and whatnot, I still continued on that path to party. Yes, I drank. Yes, I did some drugs. Honestly, probably tried almost all there is drug-wise. Never put a needle in my arm, I'll tell you that straight up. Never done it, never would. And don't get me wrong, I'm not condoning drinking or doing drugs. But I can personally say I was never addicted. I was addicted to the lifestyle of partying and being around. You know, I was used to being around people. That's why I wanted to party. That's why I did it. You know, fun times, right? Trying to make sure my camera's still charging. Which it is not. So let me try making this quick. Ended up getting in trouble again through a senior party that year. Basically was told I couldn't come back to school. I'd made the decision after getting in trouble that I would transfer schools. No bueno, didn't work. Tried coming back. I was told I couldn't come back, so I ended up not graduating with my class. I'd like to say that was the end of those troubles, but I continued to party. I went into the work life and got in trouble one more time, And at that time I got in trouble. I was looking at 5 to 15 years because they were going to accumulate all the charges from my previous to that because of how I played and how I worked my deals out. Thankfully, the Lord seen fit, did not go down that way. And now it's my testimony. It's one of the main reasons that I give back into the community with wrestling like I do. But yeah, and if it wasn't for Jeff Mayer and Coach Cunningham and my parents continuously believing in me, even after I made mistakes, and giving me the opportunity to come back and give back, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. But I will say this right before I close this up for this one. I'm not condoning anything. I'm just telling you my story. And the walks that I've gone through to get to where I'm at. And I know that might be crazy to some folks, but it is what it is. It's the things that I went through. I continued to party a little bit after that. But then I met my now ex-wife, and that's where we will pick up next week, is me explaining my 20s and my 30s into my first year of 40 and 41. We will do 20 years instead of 10 years in next week's episode, because I'm going to close this one out right here, right now, before the GoPro completely dies on me for whatever reason. So we'll pick it up next week, guys. God loves you. I love you. If you can't hug somebody, at least smile and wave. And remember, you never know whose life you might change. Anyway, we love y'all. We'll see you next week when we pick it up right before I got married.